Hi everybody and welcome to a brand new episode. I hope you're safe and I hope you're well as always. In today's episode I am finally getting around to doing that Q&A and answering those questions you've been leaving me now for a few weeks. If I get time, I'm also going to start weeding out one of the flower beds. I did say that I was going to hopefully start painting the shed today, but it's just been too wet, so that's hopefully going to be in the next video. But I filled up my kettle, so let's head to the shed and have that chat. Well, welcome back and welcome back to my shed. I think it's a little tidier than the last time you saw it, but it still needs a bit of a makeover. That's the inside and the outside of the shed, so I think that's going to be one of the jobs for over winter or in early spring. Now this week my episode is all about a Q&A. So for those of you who are new followers or are recently tuning in, you might not be aware of this episode. So over the last few episodes I've been asking you guys to send in questions about my baking, about my allotment, or just general questions about me. I've been keeping them in my book and I've got those to go through today, or I'm going to get through as many as I can. I hope the kettle boils because it is really, really chilly and you tend not to get much warmer when you're not out there doing some work. But for those of you who don't normally tune in or you are new followers of mine, I'll give you just a little bit of background before I go into the questions. So my name's Hayley. I live in Norfolk. I'm originally from the Midlands, but I moved to Norfolk for work. And I love living out in the countryside, and I took on my allotment plot about a year, and it's not quite a year and a half, so a year and a few months ago. I just realised that there's a tree in the background, well, a big branch. I found this when I was foraging yesterday. Totally off topic, but I'm going to make one of those sort of Christmas trees that are all in fashion. But without paying the hefty price tag. So just in case you're wondering why I've got a branch behind me, that's why. So I've had my allotment now for just over a year. This year has been my first full proper growing season. Last year it was sort of a bit too late to get the full effect, if you like. So this year has been the first go I've had. It's been a complicated year, with obviously the dreaded COVID and lockdown, but fortunately I was never in a position where I was unable to come up to the allotment, so it was sort of my escape. I've also heard from a lot of people that they've taken on an allotment because of COVID and because of their mental health, and they just want to do something to benefit them mentally and physically, which is an awesome thing to do. Saying that, it is really, really hard work keeping up an allotment, but so rewarding as well. So rewarding. So that's me. I'm Hayley, enjoying life in the Norfolk countryside right now. That is my life, and it's great. Yeah, that is pretty much it. So I grow flowers, I grow vegetables, I grow fruit, and I just love experimenting with new varieties, new things that I want to grow, and just enjoy it. Really, that is the bottom line. Absolutely enjoying everything about having an allotment. So without further ado, let's head into these questions. So let me open my book. I hope you're all well, by the way. It's getting chilly now. It is about the 20th-ish, 22nd, God, time's getting away from me, 22nd of November. It's starting to get chilly. it is the time of year now where we are just turning the allotment over, getting ready for spring. Best time of year allotment wise in my opinion. Yeah, so just get through the cold. Okay, so I've got several questions from you guys, so I'm going to try and get through as many as I can. Okay, first question is from Sean. Thank you very much for your question. And you have asked, when do I start planning my allotment for next year's growing season? And am I trying anything new next year? Okay, so planning for my next allotment season has already started. In terms of my physical plan, there's a few more questions similar to that later on about how I plan my allotment in terms of whether I write it down or not. I'll go into a bit later, but I do plan my allotment. The shed door is going to shut on me now and it's going to get really dark. Oh man. Okay, let me just go and open it. Oh, okay, so, I forgot where I was. Okay, so when do I start planning for my next year's growing season, and am I trying anything new next year? So, in short, the planning for next year has already begun. Turning my beds over now is basically the aim of the colder months of the year. Obviously, weeds grow a lot less as well in the winter months, so I like to try and get it all turned over. And then early part of next year, I will just make sure I keep on top of the weeds, which obviously will be minimal. And then I'll do some mulching. I use chicken manure pellets. There's also a lady opposite my allotment who has horses, so we have an endless supply of manure from her as well. So we can mulch, we can manure, we chicken manure, obviously different areas. And that starts now basically, so the longer the nutrients have to get into the soil, in my opinion, the better. So yeah, it's already begun. In terms of my physical plan, I'll go into that a little later on. And am I trying anything new? I always have to try new things, that's just the way I am. This year I tried cucamelons for the first time. Gotta be honest, I didn't like them, so I won't be trying them again. Next year I'm trying kaleets, or I think some people know them as flower sprouts. So I'll be giving those a try. I'm also trying a new variety of squash that's called mashed potato. For anyone that knows me well knows that potatoes are my favourite food. So apparently it has the consistency of a mashed potato. So definitely going to give that a try. And I'm also trying a new variety of, not kale, chard, which is called peppermint. So that is bright yellow stems and bright green leaves. So I've ordered my seeds for those as well, and I will be giving those a go. So at least 3 new varieties of vegetables that I'm trying next year. So moving on to another question from Danny Naomi on Instagram. What are my top tips for weed control? And do I have any plans to share my videos on Instagram? In terms of weed control, there are several things you can do. Some people obviously do use the no dig method. I am very much old school, and I do still weed, and I weed the traditional sense, and that is just the way I am. I've nothing against the no dig method. I haven't tried it myself, so people say that it's very good, but I've never tried. You can also use things like laying cardboard on top of your patch over winter to stop the weeds growing through. You can also buy weed suppressant membrane, which you put again over your crops, and that should prevent the weeds from growing really, really quickly. I don't do either. I am at the allotment a lot. And I just find that a little and often going over each of the beds with a hoe takes around 5 minutes, and this time of year, cue the kettle, this time of year you only have to do it about once a month. So yep, I stick with the little and often method and it keeps the weeds down just fine. But you can use weed suppressant, you can use cardboard, and you can try the no dig method. I think it's Charles Dowding that does that, so if you want to do some research into no dig, then yeah, log on and look him up and see what you think to those ideas. In regards to sharing my videos on Instagram, I haven't actually thought about it. Not many people have come back to me about Instagram because YouTube seems to be the video outlet. However, if you think that would be easier and more beneficial, I'll consider putting sort of short snippets of gardening information on Instagram as well. Okay, next question is from Kerry, and she says, could you tell me the best squashes to grow in a fairly small space, and are there any that can be grown upright? If so, which do I recommend? Like a three-parter. Okay, so best squashes to grow in a small space. There are several, as long as you go for a bush type squash. This year I have grown Harlequin and baby bush scallop squash. They both grow upright, as it sounds, in a bush. So they don't trail, you plant them and they grow, and the squashes grow on the plant. So anything that is called a bush variety of squash is your best way to go if you're looking at saving space. In terms of growing upwards, again, I grew not squash but Jackby little pumpkins over my archways this year, as well as a kuri squash, and they happen to cling on quite well, and because they're quite small, they're not super heavy, so usually can support their own weight. So they're the best to go for. If you see any squash and you're unsure, most squashes can be trained upwards. I mean, you could even train a butternut squash upwards if you wanted to, but they're unlikely to be able to support their own weight, so they're likely to break off early. So if you stick with smaller varieties of squash, you shouldn't have a problem. I hope that helps. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to Jane's question, that's also on Instagram. What are your favourite vegetables to grow to eat? What grows well on your allotment, and what are your growing challenges? I'll just get my drink, hold on. It's a bit chilly. Okay, thank you for your question, Jane. So my favourite vegetables to grow and eat are potatoes. You probably didn't need me to tell you that. I love potatoes. That's the reason I got an allotment in the first place, because I wanted to grow my own potatoes in huge quantities. So that is the reason I took on an allotment. So definitely to grow to eat potatoes. Also sweet corn, because I was also quite intrigued about how they grew. I heard they were quite hard to grow, so I saw that as a bit of a challenge and wanted to take on growing sweet corn as well. What grows really well on your allotment? Surprisingly, I do well with root veg generally. Beetroot are great, carrots are great. Parsnips, which I tried to grow for the first time this year, you'll probably have seen that in an earlier video. I was really disappointed because I managed to grow 5 parsnips. Well, what I thought were 5 parsnips. I put 300 seeds down, so I was quite disappointed. However, I did dig them up last week, and I got 9, and one of them was absolutely enormous. I couldn't believe it. I was so pleased with it. Just remember, when you're handling parsnips, always wear gloves, because the leaves have a toxic element to them, so they can cause a really bad rash for a few weeks. So future note, if you're growing parsnips, always use gloves to pull them up. So yeah, root veg grow really well on my allotment. Let me think. I mean, potatoes are always great. I don't have any problems with squashes either. Squashes and pumpkins are really good. Growing challenges, without a doubt, are brassicas. I cannot grow a cauliflower. I mean, I can grow a cauliflower, I can grow the plant, it grows the foliage, it grows everything and looks beautiful. I never get a single cauliflower appear on any of my cauliflowers. Broccoli, for some reason, I always seem to miss. I watch them and watch them and watch them, and then they go to flower and they have a tiny, tiny head of broccoli on. So I seriously need to do some work on my brassica growing. Brussels sprouts are always great. Kale, easy. Just keep them netted. Swede, I struggle. I can grow them, but they're always so small. I tried planting less. I tried planting them not so close together. I don't know. Maybe you guys can help me out on the brassica front. But yeah, they are my nemesis. That and aubergines. 2 years in a row now I've planted aubergines in my polytunnel. I have hand pollinated them. They get the beautiful flowers every single year. And then they start growing aubergines, they get to about this big, and then they die and drop off. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong there. So biggest challenges are definitely brassicas and aubergines, without a doubt. Okay, so Corinne, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. She has asked how many beds are there on my allotment. So I think the best way for me to answer this question is at the end I'll take you out and I'll give you a sort of a look at all the individual beds. Obviously there's not a lot going on there at the moment, but we'll go out, we'll take a look. I would say there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 very big beds. Then there's the polytunnel and there's the fruit cage, and then there's lots of little smaller patches. So what I'll do is I'll take you out to have a look, so you can see for yourself, though it is very, very empty at the moment. Moving on now to a baking question from Tufty. What is your most significant learning this year? Is it on the plot or in the kitchen? I would definitely say, for what I just said in the previous question, it's definitely up at the allotment. I like to say I'm quite good at baking. I used to bake a lot when I was younger, and my mum and I used to do a lot of baking, and it's something that I've just always really enjoyed. I remember when I got a bit older and when my mum used to go out, when I was a teenager, my mum used to say, oh, I'm just going to nip to the shop, so you're going to be okay? And I'd say, yep, I'll be fine. As soon as she was out that door, the mixing bowl was out. Because I just, for me, I don't know, I bake because I know that it makes people happy. People love to receive a cake or something that you've made. So baking is something I've always loved doing ever since I was small. So I suppose I just feel that it's automatic. Like, I know it sounds really silly, but it's something I've always done. So I like trying out new recipes, of course. But challenge-wise, definitely on the plot. Finding things that you can't grow, I find that really frustrating. And I know other people do as well. When you put so much time and love into growing things from seed and 6 months later it's still not producing anything, and you just think, oh my goodness, please just do something, produce that flower or produce that vegetable, and you feel like you're doing everything right, but it still doesn't come to fruition. Oh yeah, that baffles me. But I suppose people feel the same way about baking, maybe. I don't know. Luckily for me, that comes quite naturally. So definitely the plot, definitely the biggest challenges for me, for sure. Next question is quite funny. What made me want to invite people up to my allotment and into my home? That is a really good question. The honest reason I do it is to make people happy. I want people to learn. I want people to feel that they can then go out and do something, and it doesn't matter if it goes wrong, that we all make mistakes, we're all human, and if someone learns one thing or somebody smiles once in their day from watching my video, then that makes me a happy person, and that is the reason I do it. Of course it's for my well-being as well, and I love being at my allotment, I love baking, and I thought if I can share that and make someone else happy, or just make someone smile, or just forget about something rubbish that's going on in their day or in their life at that particular moment, then I feel as though I've done my job. Though that sounds really cliche as well, so I don't know, I'll never win, but that's the aim, to share and spread a little bit of happiness to others. You've also asked if I can roll around pastry. Yes, I can roll around pastry. The air does sometimes go a bit blue, but we do get there. I can and do roll around pastry. Maybe I'm going to do that in another episode now, just so you can see me do it. But yeah. Okay, next question. Are there any odd, interesting, awkward rules on your allotment site? Luckily, not really. We're very fortunate in that the rules here are quite relaxed. The only thing I do find a little bit weird is that you can use a hose pipe. Now, my plot, the only real negative about my plot is that it's about 100 metres from the nearest tap. But you can use a hose pipe on your plot, but only to fill up your water butts. You then have to tip your water butts into a watering can to then water your plot, which I find a bit... I understand that it saves water rather than people just being relentless with a hose pipe. I totally get that. The only problem is, if I'm going to fill up my water butts, because my plot is so far from the tap, I'm going to fill them all in one go. I've got 4. The water flow isn't fabulous, so it probably takes me around an hour to fill all 4. So I have to then come at a time of day where not many people are going to be here, because I don't want to use the tap for an hour or 45 minutes or however long it takes, because that's not then fair on everyone else. So yeah, it is weird, because I would probably spend 10 minutes with a hose pipe watering the plot and everyone else would do the same. But that's probably the one weird rule. But it's not that weird, because like I say, I can see the logic. It does save water, and people probably would go a bit hose pipe Larry if they could just chuck the hose on the allotment, or just leave a sprinkler on and go away for half an hour. So that's probably the only thing. But apart from that, I'm pretty lucky. No weird shed rules, or we're limited to number of livestock we can have, so chickens and ducks and turkeys and things like that, but it's not a weird rule. You don't want to have an allotment with 300 chickens on it. So yeah, in terms of weird rules, not really. So plans for the 2021 season. So do I design it on square paper, or do I make it up as I go? So this links to Sean's question earlier. In terms of a physical plan, I always try and have something like a garden planner. Now, this one was bought for me last year. My sister bought me this one, and she bought it me for Christmas. So I'd obviously planned for this year previously. So I've saved this garden planner for next year. So what I sort of will do is, it's got obviously little sections, and in each little section, it's also got graph paper, which folds out, so you can draw your plot on here, and you can design, what you're going to plant, where you're going to plant it, and just do it really to scale, which is what I like to do. Each of the sections are in here. I don't know how I'm holding this. There's a spring, summer, autumn and winter section. You can write down your plant list as well for each part of the year, which is really handy. There's several garden plan sheets in here just in case you go wrong. Things to do, and then you can tick them off. Obviously there'll be pages and pages. Notes and inspiration. So this will include things for me, like this year I have decided that, due to losing one of my best friends this year, she loved sunflowers, and she has an allotment, or had an allotment on the same site as I. So what I'm going to do is do a massive sunflower wall along the back of my plot, just so I can remember her. So I can doodle things and have inspiration on here for what I'm going to be doing next year. I'm also going to write down all my varieties, what I'm going to plant, when I need to plant them. But I do that on like a spreadsheet, so I can tick it off and know when I've done it. And just remember always to write down dates when you are planting, or when to plant, just so you don't get really confused. The springtime, for those of you who haven't had an allotment for very long, can get very confusing. My conservatory at home turns into a garden centre, that is what it looks like. There are seedlings all over the place. I very rarely buy plug plants. I try and do everything where I can from seed, and it does get chaotic. So label everything, date everything, and just keep hold of your packets or jot down when things need to go outside, how long they need to be acclimatized outside for before you go and put them outside. It's also worth noting when your frosts are in the area that you live. We get frosts right up to the middle of May, and even though the temptation to put things out when it feels warm around Easter time and you think, oh, I'm putting them in, and then you have a heavy frost at the last minute, it's horrible, because you can lose absolutely everything. So don't be too keen. Wait until you know when your frost date is past, and then do it. Don't get too happy, because it must be awful to lose everything and then you have to start again or buy plug plants. And you've been growing these plants for 6, 8, 10 weeks and then you lose them to a late frost. It's not worth it. This planner also has a section for garden photographs. I'm quite lucky. I do keep photographs in several places. When I take them on my phone and I share them with you guys on Instagram and Facebook and things like that, I then always back them up on my computer, and then I back them up somewhere else on a hard drive. So I have copies of them everywhere. But what I do want to do is start printing out more and actually enjoying the pictures of the allotment, especially in times of year like this when the weather isn't great, and you can look back on the summer and look at those pictures and think, oh, lovely, thinking back to those times. So that's pretty much it. I am going to do an episode sort of December time that is going to show you the plan of my allotment for next year. If I'm honest, I haven't finished deciding what I'm growing yet. So that's the reason why I haven't filmed that episode yet, because it will just have empty blobs all over the place. So I just want to get that all sorted, and then I'll share that episode with you too. Next question is, what is next for your polytunnel now it's empty? So the only thing I might put in there is some winter greens in terms of lettuce and spinach, but apart from that, I pretty much give the polytunnel this time to rest. I'll mulch it, I'll manure it, and I will just leave it until next year. And basically I just let it get the full nourishment over the winter, and then just hope it will be at its best for next year. So no major plans for the winter, apart from just keep it weed free, keep it mulched, keep it fertilised, and then left for the spring. And last but not least, I feel like I've been talking at you for ages. Last but not least, a question from Suzanne, who is also my mum. So hi mum. She has asked me what she needs to do with her leek plants now that they are almost ready. They're looking big, but they're not quite big enough to be pulled. So leek plants can be pulled up from the ground sort of any time between now, and you might even get away with it as late as March. But when you're happy to pull them, then pull them. In terms of over the winter, leeks are one of the hardiest of vegetables. So you can give them a little mulch if you want to, but they should be fine on their own. I was picking leeks until February of this year from last year's crop, and I didn't do anything to them. I expected to come back to the plot and they'd be dead, basically. But you sort of look around all the allotments and the only things you really see growing are Swiss chard and leeks in sort of February time. So they'll be fine. They're really, really hardy. They can handle a frost. But you can start picking them from whenever you want to. I hope that answers all of your questions. I think I've covered everything that you guys have sent to me. I am aware I have been rambling on for nearly half an hour. So yeah, I'm going to stop. You're probably bored listening to me now. But I hope I answered all of your questions, and I hope that you enjoyed listening to this segment. If you did, or you think of any other questions you want to ask me, just pop them in the comments below and I'll try and get back to you individually and leave you a comment. I'm thinking of doing Q&A sessions maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So maybe another one towards the end of spring when we're getting all those seeds in and getting the allotment back up and running again in 2021. So if you enjoyed the Q&A, let me know in the comments and I'll consider doing one in the springtime as well. But before I go, I am going to just start weeding one of the worst of the flower beds because it is just now really tired. I have got some last bulbs to get in, so I want to get that done today. But just for Corinne's benefit as well, I'll just take you on a quick look at all the different beds on the allotment. Okay, I'm going to make this quick because it is quite chilly and I want to get the flower beds weeded. But for everyone who doesn't know how big my allotment is, this is the new gate we're going to be using to do the gate in upcoming episodes. This is the flower bed that desperately needs me to sort out today. It's shocking. So yeah, I'm going to get some work done on that today. But in terms of the beds on my allotment, as you can see, I have started turning them over now. This is the strawberry patch, which is sort of half been sorted. The other half still needs a lot of work. But then going on to my main beds, so this is what was the pea and bean bed earlier in the year. This has already been turned over once, but will need doing again. I also need to now cut my gladioli down to the ground because they are officially done. Obviously you're supposed to wait until the leaves go brown, not cut them back when they're green. So they are done. This was my pumpkin patch, which is quite sad to see now. Yeah, very sad, but that is, again, that's had one turning over and I'll give that another turning over soon. My pathways really need some weeding, but they are really difficult to do, so I'll be leaving them for a little bit longer just to see if anything else dies back before I take that on. This was my sweet corn and there were some pumpkins in here again. That's all been turned over. And this is my brassica area, so there are still cabbages in here which I'm leaving, and as you can see, my Brussels sprouts. Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, you can't see them, that's so annoying, but there are loads of Brussels sprouts in there. Let's just hope lockdown lets me take them to my family for Christmas. Here's hoping. So this is the area that is left still to do, which is my archways, which have now absolutely gone, and the rest of my brassica area. For those of you who have been watching lately, my garlic are now on the way. They are growing, they are quite happy. This one a lot slower than the rest, but they are poking through. They are a lot smaller, but they're there. These ones are doing fabulously in comparison, but yeah, they're happy, they're on the way, and they are well. So it's pretty much this last area to get sorted before the spring. So yeah, it looks like a big job, but in comparison to the size of the area we've already given a start, I'm pretty happy. Also the carrot area, which is the bit you can see sort of here, it's all in a cage. That will all come down and be moved because of crop rotation, so that won't be there next year either. That was where the pumpkins were this year, that's where they were last year, so it's moved from that bed to that bed, and then next year it will move from this bed right up to the far end where the composters are, and along that back wall there, that's where I plan on having my sunflower wall in memory of my friend, so can't wait to do that as well. So that's pretty much it. But yeah, it is a big job. This time of year is where the graft starts, shall we say. These are some more gladioli that again need cutting right back to ground level. Just remember, you just don't forget they're there. That's the problem. And it's the pathways that need the major work. But all in all, you know, the really big beds have been turned over, and yeah, made a good start so far considering we're only in November. So like I said earlier, the last job I want to do is get some of this, at least the flower bed, weeded. There are things I'll be cutting back a bit, like the verbena, which will come back next year. So there are things I'll just be cutting back, and there will be things I will be weeding, but I'm hoping just to get this tidied up a bit today. Move, Mr. Gnome. Well guys, that is it from me this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode, particularly the Q&A part. I'm glad my flower bed is now completely weeded, though I am absolutely filthy, and all of my spring bulbs are now in, so I can relax about that. I just wanted to say thank you as always for taking the time to watch this episode, and if you enjoyed the content, please give me a comment or a like below, and you can always consider subscribing to my channel. Like I said earlier, I am looking at doing a Q&A session every 3 to 4 months, so if you enjoyed it, let me know. If it's something that you thought was a bit then let me know that too, and maybe I'll do them less frequently. But as always, thank you for taking the time to tune into my videos, and I'll see you all very, very soon.